Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. We have the full group here this week. I guess I'm here with an apology. I don't know if it's Eric's fault or my fault that we didn't do a show last week. I think it may be both. I know it's not Mark's or Greg's, so don't blame them. They'll screw up this week's show, though, I'm sure. Guys, it is getting to crunch time. This week is Big Ten Media. I guess not Media Day because it's Media Days, but Media Day is coming up. Maybe we should start there. And so, what is it that you guys are looking to hear from USC coaches and players at Media Day this week? What are the big questions that need to be answered? Mark, leadoff batter, do it.
All right. So, first question, Coach Riley, what did you learn last year in your inaugural season coaching the Big Conference? Was it different coaching the Big compared to the Pac-12 or the former Big 12? Because it seemed like, there was an adjustment period, and it took USC a while to get adjusted. I want to see how he responds to that type of question, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. And then obviously, we were talking about it just before we started recording. Does he have just a canned response for the whole USC Notre Dame rivalry, possibly ending this year? I mean, everything else is just going to be your typical coach speak. As like I said, we were talking right before we started. Strength and conditioning is great. We're optimistic about the offense, the defense. We think this player's going to do good, that player's going to do good. Other than that, I'm hoping that we can get some less than coach speak answers from Coach Riley. How's that?
No, good luck. Greg, question for you. You're just cynical enough to be able to answer this one.
Oh, stop with it. You're just cynical enough. You are so negative towards me.
Come on. You know that's true. No, I love you, Greg.
I know that.
Here's my question for you.
All right.
Because we're likely just to get a bunch of coach speak, right? The usual platitudes, nothing substantive about changes in terms of offensive or defensive game plans, nothing really about injuries, nothing about Longstreet and whether he's pushing Iowa. And in fairness, Riley really shouldn't be talking about any of those things. So my question for you is there any value to these interviews at Media Day? And if so, how do you go about sucking that value out of a bunch of coach speak answers?
Well, what's the old saying? Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. But my feeling is that any question that you ask, no matter how pointed, is going to get a response. The important thing to me is how I react to that response when that question is confronted before, during, or after the season. One of those, well, you told us this at Media Day. You said, we're going to run the ball more. And then the reality is, did they run the ball more? So in a lot of ways, to me, if you ask questions, they're important. I know what he's going to say for Notre Dame SC. We're still working on it. We haven't been able to come to the correct. I mean, you've seen this a million times. But the point is that he's talking about it. People really care about it. I mean, with Riley, you never quite know. I mean, he's always cordial. He's always insightful from his perspective. But the reality is, tell us what's going on, and he'll give you a very bland answer. But he could say, we're here for Big Ten Media Day. We're not here about Notre Dame. But the point is we're really about your entire season. That's why you have a Media Day to talk not only about the conference, of course, but everything that's beyond it. So, no, I think that there is no dumb questions in a Media Day. I think it's really important. And I'll tell you what, when the players are interviewed, then it gets interesting because they don't have the, shall we say, experience to say something that isn't going to be right on or is going to be like, well, I'm not supposed to talk about that. So it's interesting.
No. That's a good point. And Coach Riley must feel the way lawyers feel when their clients have to answer questions, which is just fear that they're going to screw everything up and say something different than what we talked about. Eric, I suppose there's some value in that. What you do at least get from Media Day is you get the talking points that USC wants to stress, right? You know what the program is trying to project, and And that might tell you a little bit of something that's lurking in Lincoln Riley's head. What do you expect to hear from Lincoln this week?
So I'd be curious about how far in he goes on kind of what we expect from the defense to take a step forward and sort of start talking again about, wow, USC's really playing defense. They're really playing defense because that has not caught on nationally. And so I'm curious if he wants to keep, because he's been pretty open about, hey, I think we have the best defensive staff in the country. I think we've put together the best defensive staff. And when that goes out to kind of recruits' ears, that's one way to push it. Hey, we're playing defense here. We want you to come here. Curious how if he kind of soft plays that around like Big Ten Media Day and just lets that narrative kind of keep going. They're not going to play defense. They're not going to show up. They're not going to do that, or how hard he kind of hits on that. And then for me, whenever he talks about quarterbacks, whenever he says anything about Jade Mayava, right? There's always, again, he's getting better, decision making, whatever. Like Greg said, there's always something where you can find okay, that was something pointed. He wanted to talk about that. He wanted to, mention this. He's not specifically talking about this. That sort of stuff to me, whenever he talks about quarterbacks, is interesting enough, even if it is trying to give absolutely nothing away at that point. But I don't know if he'll go into, I mean, somebody might ask, why isn't Jaden Mayava here? Right. That's a something. But just in terms of what you've seen from him full off season, I mean, we're not at a full off season yet, but that type of development, all of that kind of stuff. Because the quarterback spot, I mean, you could do a 2-hour USC 2025 season preview and never have to get off the quarterback position going into it. I mean, that's where that program is right now.
I'm going to do
Yeah.
a follow-up question with Kirk Ferentz this year. Last year, I asked him, why he had that veiled shot at Lincoln Riley and USC playing defense. I want to see if he's learned anything about USC's defense last year because they are on the schedule later this year. So.
Yeah, I want to ask him when they're going to start playing offense. Although maybe it'll be this year. They have a transfer quarterback and a good old line coming back. So maybe this is the year Iowa scores like 24 points a game and everybody gets pumped up. Here's what's interesting to me. Some of the stuff that we talk about that we worry about, Lincoln Riley can't talk about, right? You can't. If he's scared to death of the left guard position, thinking that his transfer might be out, he's gonna have to play a young guy there. He's not going to tell us that, right? I mean, he'll tell us, well, we're next man up. If you ask him what happens if Eric Gentry goes down, he's going to say the same thing. He has to, because that has to be his message to his team. So he certainly can't tell us, well, if Eric Gentry goes down, we got huge problems on our defense, right? That doesn't make sense. But here's what I think he might be able to say if he's inclined. Lincoln Riley said a couple of years ago that he was going to make USC's focus a return to playing great defense, that he was going to build practices around that he was going to get the staff he needed, all this stuff. Some of that we can see. I don't know if it's the best defensive staff in the country. It might be, and at the very least, it is an excellent defensive staff, right? They're great. There are future head coaches all over that staff. And so that part you can see, but I also wonder, what other changes have you made? You said that you would change, that if you had to change the way you practice, you would. I assume that means if you have to change the way you call plays or the ways you strategize offensively to play good defense, that you do that too. So what are the other changes that we can't see, other than hiring Lynn and Henney and these guys? What have you done? I'd be curious to see if he answers that. That sounds like the sort of thing he might be willing to answer, and I'd like to hear it. But look, I'm not ripping on Lincoln Riley when I say you're going to get a bunch of coach speak. The reason it's called coach speak is because every coach in the history of football realizes that actually coach speak is useful because you don't say anything to hurt your current players. You don't say anything to get on the bulletin board of opposing teams. I mean, Lincoln Riley knows if he wins a lot of games this year, he's okay, even if he just speaks in bland coach speak like Bill Belichick always did, right? Didn't seem to be a problem for him. So What about the other Big Ten teams? Do you think we'll have? I mean, there's no Mike Leach, so there are no guaranteed good quotes. But what do you think? Are there any other programs you'd be interested in hearing from, and what do you want to hear?
I mean, Deshaun Foster follow up, right? What he does in year two. I'm curious if they have a whole pre-planned skit or whatever, just nothing off the cuff. They've been working on it for over a year. We're gonna go out, we're gonna deliver this, and we're gonna get off the stage.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Does he come prepared for more than 2 sentences? Because then there's growth.
Well, I think one of the things you have to remember, unless the Big Ten is changing things, is although nationally, they introduce the coach speaks. Okay, good, fine. You can pretty much guess what the comments will be. Sometimes you get a juicer in there, but you have to remember that after it's over, the main part, the coaches generally go to a table, either through eating or whatever, and the scribes are allowed to sit there and ask questions. And sometimes that's where the best questions are given. And sometimes that's also where the best answers are given because the cameras aren't really in front of the coach, as they do on the Big Ten network or the old Pac-12 network, whatever. And you can really find out what a coach is thinking because he's not as, how should I put it, tense being in front of the national media. But a lot of the national media will come over to him that cover the Big Ten, which is a lot of people, a lot of, coast to coast. And he's got to be careful what he says, but that's where I found that you get many of the best answers. You brought up, Chris, I think, the running game. Well, that's always a question. And he's going to say that he loves his running backs and yada, yada, yada. But really, what does it mean for him as a coach? Is his offensive line that good that he can have this confidence? And if they are you going to run the ball? Now, he's probably going to say, of course we're going to run the ball. I like our tackles. I like our situation. He's going to say it, but whether he does it will be the bottom line answer to the question.
Yeah, and look, maybe at this point he would be willing to say why he wasn't willing to run the ball as much last year as in prior years. I think the answer is he didn't trust his offensive line, but he's probably not going to tell us that. So, so we don't really know if things are going to be different. One thing that's almost certain to come up is the future of the playoff because it's clear that the Big Ten and the SEC now are at a standoff and. It sounds like the SEC is willing to come one step closer to the Big Ten, maybe move to 9 conference games, and we'll see what that does to the Big Ten's position. The Big Ten is worried that the SEC figures that they'll play some directional schools, win 8 games, and then they should get an automatic berth in the playoff. And the way the voting works, most of the time they probably would. I think the Big Ten should just up the ante and say, if you want to get in the playoff as an at-large, you have to have at least 9 wins against Power Four teams.
Well, what's interesting is Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, wants the 9-game conference schedule. He's getting the pushback from the coaches.
Of course, the coaches look. Nobody knows the importance of scheduling soft opponents more than coaches do. I mean, these guys' their entire careers at risk. If you look at it this way, a lot of the SEC teams do play one good out of conference opponent, but some of them play 4 lousy ones. All of them play at least 3 lousy ones, right? So that's 3, and then if you get usually Vandy and Mississippi State and a couple of down programs, you're at 6 wins and you haven't beaten anybody. And in that conference, they think if you get to 9, that God has granted you special dispensation to the playoff. I think the Big Ten should just say, look, we're fine. We're fine having conference winners and everybody else at large, but let's change the at-large rules because we're not interested in teams running up a bunch of wins against absolute nobodies. And then claiming they deserve a spot in the playoff because they went 1-3 against their good opponents. That's ridiculous. But the SEC won't like that either. But by the way, most of the Big Ten won't like it either, including probably Lincoln Riley. Okay, guys, any other thoughts on media day and what we expect or what we hope to see?
I always like the who was the biggest jump, I think, in the offseason, right? Again, it gives you, and there's a bunch of ways you can answer. You can answer a backup behind a guy that we want to see more from, and you get that guy's name out, and then you push kind of both those guys. But I think a lot of especially because that 2024 class was so good, and there were some guys who played, some guys you thought you'd see more of or whatever, but that first offseason jump, and we talked about that forever. You've heard it forever, where the first offseason is always sort of the most significant jump. And there's a bunch of guys, in that group that I'd be curious to hear, have they put themselves in position going into fall camp to make some noise.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense to me too. Okay. Since we skipped last week, we threw off our timing. We were doing one game preview a week, and now we're one behind, which means we're going to squish two into 1 week.
We hit the bye week. It was a bye week. We're doing the exact schedule.
Okay, but I didn't plan for the bye week, so that was my mistake. And so now we're going to have to do two in 1 week, and you would think, well, we should probably combine it where you have a game that's not really worth talking about. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Michigan and Notre Dame today. That's what we're going to do because we're going to up the level of difficulty. That's what the people want. All right, so let's start with Michigan. This obviously comes after the road game at Illinois. If USC wins that one, they're almost certain to be 5-0 with a home date against Michigan. Michigan has a game at OU and a game home against Miami, I think. I may be wrong about that. That may be Notre Dame. But Michigan has a couple of real games before the USC game. So we'll know more about both teams before October 11th than we do now. But let's start with this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for Lincoln Riley to beat Michigan this year? Eric?
I don't know if it's 10, but it's much closer to 10 than 1. It's big. It's big. You are going to get 50%, 60% Michigan fan. Like it's going to be loud for Michigan at the Coliseum. And people think Bryce Underwood's going to be pretty good if you're going to get him now, right? When he's a freshman. But I think you need to. It was a little bit like Penn State last year. Like you needed to sort of announce yourself as that number 3-ish team in the conference last year, and you played Penn State tough, but then you dropped every other game. Michigan is that one, I think, for USC this year. I know, we'll get to Oregon and that's whatever, but a home game where a team like Michigan last year, a team like Penn State is coming out to Los Angeles. You've got to win that game. You've got to win that game if you're going to start to get to where you think you need to be. This one's gigantic. It's gigantic. It's not Notre Dame in terms of importance for USC fans and all that stuff, but losing at Notre Dame, excuse me, Chris, I'm sorry about this, but losing at Notre Dame easier I think to swallow than losing at home to this Michigan team this year. I think for the program, where you want to go, the climb that you want to take, that Michigan home game this year is really important to win.
All right. Well, I hate the way Eric worded something.
I know.
It was almost true. Greg Katz, can USC lose to Michigan and reasonably expect to have a successful season? Because I'm looking at it wondering, if you lose that one, I mean, obviously you can lose that game and then win all the others and things are fine. But if you lose that game at home to Michigan, you can't really expect to win all the others. So can USC lose to Michigan and have a successful season? Or is it going to be a little bit like last year where USC looked like they were on their way to something? They have the disaster at Michigan, and then the wheels kind of come off the wagon.
Well, this Michigan team is going to be very interesting. They have a new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey from North Carolina. So that'll be interesting to see what other changes. Sharon Moore, the head coach, he has to show that he can really compete at the highest level. A lot of people will be saying, well, he's been competing with Harbaugh's players that were recruited in the past, which is true to an extent. But Michigan probably will have a former five-star freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood, or they'll go with a freshman, or excuse me, a Fresno State transfer in Mikey Keene. Uh, you know what? It's going to be interesting. Michigan's offense against USC's defense. If there's going to be a statement made by USC about their defense, this probably is going to be it. Even though if Michigan doesn't perform as well, they'll say, well, they didn't have a veteran quarterback, and you know what? It's going to be a good measuring stick. I don't think it would be a good look if Michigan can beat SC 2 years in a row, both home and away. Um, I don't think it'll affect recruiting per se with the SC coach, with the recruits that we're all looking forward to with this class. It's going to be, coming in, within over a year from now. But I think when it's all said and done, Michigan is still Michigan, and they still have a lot of really good players, and they're recruiting really good players. So if SC is going to really make a statement nationally, this is definitely a game that'll probably be nationally televised, I would think, on the major network. And Lincoln Riley, whether Lincoln Riley is in real trouble at SC, I can tell you that he's got to prove that he can win these games, even when we're supposed to wait for a year or two. I don't think that SC fans want to wait for a year or two. I agree with with Eric. They really have to win this game because there is no excuses for them.
Yeah. Mark, thoughts on Michigan?
Yeah, they on a scale of 1 to 10, 9.8. You play 7 home games. This year's Michigan game is last year's Penn State game. You took a huge lead in the half and you fettered it away in overtime. That can't happen again. You have to win all 7 of your home games, period. And for Lincoln Riley, I mean, he doesn't have the greatest record against ranked opponents. This Michigan team is, I think they're banking on what they recruited back in starting in 2024, maybe 2023. They only have 65%, returning production on that team, both sides of the ball. So if everyone likes to focus on recruiting. 2024, they had a top 20 class. It wasn't top 10. So if those are the guys who are now coming up, they shouldn't be better than what USC has, especially what USC has playing at home. So this game is ultimate. It has the ultimate of importance. One, because USC is trying to prove that they can beat, a brand name, a ranked team at home, nonetheless. And for Lincoln Riley, he's got to show that, I can beat a ranked team. You had LSU last year to open the season, but everything after that kind of, it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, I think this is the most important game on the schedule. Eric's right. You can, if you lose at Notre Dame or lose at Oregon, those are both terrible outcomes I don't even want to consider right now, but they're understandable from the perspective of the people who vote for at-large bids in college football, right? You say, okay, you lost to top 10 teams on the road. If you played well and didn't get blown out, that doesn't kill you if you win the other games. And with Michigan, not only is it a big name team, not only is it a team that's expected to be better than USC, I'm not sure they will be, but they're expected to be. It's also a team that has their own question marks, like a lot of them. And I think the national media is papering over this. Bryce Underwood's a talented kid. Yep. And he's a true freshman who looked like a true freshman in their spring game. Look, Longstreet is a fantastic prospect too, but I would be very nervous going into a game against Michigan with him at quarterback right now, just because he's a kid. What kind of coach is Sharon Moore? It's one thing to take over a program where Jim Harbaugh had built a roster and built and built a culture. It's another thing to hold on to that. And you can keep it on fumes for a year or two. David Shaw did for a little bit more than that. Larry Coker did for a while at Miami with like an NFL All-Pro roster. But he's got something to prove, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where Michigan had gigantic offensive line problems last year, probably as bad as USC's, and is hoping they're going to get some transfers to fix it. We'll see. Michigan to me looks like a team that is going to have trouble scoring points against good defenses, and they will play good defense, but they also lost three of the best players in the conference last year, and I don't know how easy it is to replace those guys. So not only do I think it's the most important game on the schedule, I think it's a game that USC should win. Mark, you want to say something?
There's something else that's kind of floating out there in the ether that hasn't been talked about. But Michigan is waiting for sanctions to be handed down. So what's their mindset going to be once the season starts? Do they lose at home? Was it Oklahoma? Is that their opening game?
They're
At Oklahoma.
It's not their opening game. They go New Mexico opener, but they're at Oklahoma and at Nebraska in two of the handful of games before they come out to USC.
So if their head isn't in the game, and let's say they already have 2 losses on their record, how does that play into the whole situation? Especially with, like I said, you have sanctions looming over your head.
Yeah, Michigan is one of those
And
teams.
USC,
Go ahead.
USC will be coming off a bye, and you hope the Illinois win to give you momentum. But either way, you can get a reset and schedules favorable to you coming off a bye for a home game.
Michigan's a team that they built a culture of toughness and discipline. They played well. I mean, last year was a semi-disaster for them, but there's still the remnants of that, and they're going to have enough talent on the roster that it wouldn't shock anybody if they were a good team. But that's a team with enough question marks. I think you would expect that USC's defensive front will make it difficult for Michigan to run. Frankly, they made it difficult for Michigan to run last year, except for about 3 plays. And can you trick the freshman quarterback? And Denton Lynn probably thinks that he's going to have a chance to do that. So we'll see. It's a winnable game, but it's not going to be an easy game. It's going to be a huge matchup. If you beat Illinois and you beat Michigan, you look at the rest of the schedule and you say there are probably still some losses on this schedule, but you're probably also highly likely to make the playoffs. So, I mean, you win that one and you are in a very, very good spot. You lose that one, you lose that one with Notre Dame and Oregon road games still on the schedule. I don't know, man.
Michigan's got a hit on a lot of transfers and development stuff too. Like if you go through, there's a guy in each position group that I think you really like, right? There's a defensive end and Derek Moore that you really like, Rayshon Benny in the middle, Ernest Hausman at linebacker. Like there's guys, a defensive back here, a wide receiver here, Justice Haynes from Alabama, the running back you probably like, but all of those transfers, they all have to fit, right? You lost a ton on the offensive line, you lost a bunch on the defensive line. Every piece has to be kind of a right answer, and I just don't know if you're as confident in the whole as you were last year to be able to just say, yeah, we don't have a quarterback, but we'll overwhelm you with everything we have kind of at every other spot. So you lose the outstanding tight end. Are your skill guys good enough to pick that up? Again, I don't know. I think that at Oklahoma game for them is really interesting. I know we all have thoughts about Oklahoma, but that quarterback can play, and I know Oklahoma has some pieces where if they get going at home and you're not ready and your freshman quarterback on the road plays like a freshman quarterback, that could set the stage for a tough year.
Yeah, both of these teams struggled in the offensive line last year. I think both of them are going to be good defensively. Both have question marks at quarterback. This could be a 13-10 game, and we'll know more as we get closer, obviously. But that's sort of how it looks at this point. Now, depending on what happens there, you either set up an absolute monster USC Notre Dame game the following week between two teams that look like they're headed to the playoff, or you set up a game where USC is absolutely fighting for their lives, right? If you lose to Illinois, you lose to Michigan, and then you go to Notre Dame. That's where you are. You are fighting just to survive. And I've seen enough USC teams that are fighting to survive at Notre Dame to know how that usually turns out. So let's talk about the Irish a little bit. Eric, let's start with you. What's your perspective on Notre Dame?
Xavier Watts is gone. So as far as I can tell, that cuts their scoring average down by about 40 points a game because he did anything he wanted against USC. So that's it. I think they're terrible and won't score a point this year and won't stop anyone because Xavier Watts is gone.
I like that answer. Can anybody
Yeah.
improve upon that answer?
Without laughing or what?
If USC shuts out Notre Dame and South Bend, it's a great season, period. Whatever happens in every other game, that's how you close out a rivalry. Bye. We'll take the shillelagh forever.
You know, Notre Dame's also a team that's going to be starting a new quarterback. You feel good about their offensive line if you're Notre Dame, and you feel good about the starting running back who's really good. I don't know that on the outside Notre Dame has elite talent. I think they have some receivers that can play, but you don't look at them the way you'd look at Ohio State. They don't have that sort of talent. They want to run the ball and smash it at you and throw to the tight end on 3rd and 4 and win the game that way. I think USC is set up to play well against a team like that defensively. When you have that size along the defensive line with some experienced guys, when you have Eric Gentry, who, as
We lost
Dan Lund
Chris.
says,
I can hear.
can you hear me? When you have Danton Lynn, who talks about Eric Gentry being the guy who can, or maybe it's Rob Ryan, cover any tight end in the country, you kind of have a defense set up to play against Notre Dame and a new quarterback. But look, I mean, we've all been to that place multiple times, and Notre Dame is 2 touchdowns better at home than they are on the road. And that place is always wild for USC. And if the 2 schools haven't worked out a long-term deal before that game, you're looking at possibly the last USC Notre Dame game in the series, or at least for a long time, maybe. That place is going to be wild. It is. And USC is going to have to protect the ball and not make mistakes, because if you don't, at a place like that, it can get out of hand in a hurry. We've seen that.
It happened.
You know what?
You're gonna have an idea. Sorry, you're gonna have an idea against Illinois and Michigan. Can you really run the ball? Right? Missouri State, you're not gonna know. Purdue, you're probably not gonna know. If you by that point aren't convinced that you can really run the ball, you're going in there with maybe both arms tied behind your back, and that's going to be rough. I think that's going to be big. Like Purdue, Illinois, those are not going to be the road venues that get you ready for going to play out there. And Jay Maiava didn't have to play in real road venues last year, right? I mean, the at the Rose Bowl was not exactly in South Bend. So that's going to be big. How much help does he have offensively to get it done out there?
Yeah, and that's where we'll start to see whether Jaden Maiava, who last year was a guy who makes a lot of good throws and looks really good doing it, big, strong arm, all that, and then does something that you just shake your head. Like I don't understand how that happened, but that should never happen. You're going to learn pretty quickly in South Bend whether that's the situation. I mean, look, we've seen Sam Darnold and Caleb Williams both get crushed by that atmosphere. And I don't think Jaden Maiava is going to be either one of those guys. So we'll see what happens. That game is always a challenge, but it's going to be a major challenge this year. Greg Katz, what do you think?
You know, the first thing I think is that the head coach has to learn about what he should or shouldn't do when he goes to Notre Dame. One of the things he should do is take his team to Notre Dame on Friday for a walkthrough in the stadium and get the new players a chance to get accustomed to the, I don't know if you can't reproduce the atmosphere on game day there, but you can definitely see what it's like to be in that stadium, kind of get a feel for it. I think that to not do that, you're asking for big problems. Now, Notre Dame's going to have a new defensive coordinator, Chris Ash. So, how that's going to play out, Notre Dame's going to have good players. They have good players. I mean, you can't deny that they don't have good players. They're well coached. Everything that everybody's already said, I don't need to repeat it, but they're going to try to run the ball on SC, and they've got, the running back in Love to really do damage. And if they start running the ball on SC, that's going to put pressure on SC's offense. I don't think Notre Dame will be concerned about being intimidated or out physical by SC until SC proves that they can do that. So my feeling is it's going to be a really unique game, but it's going to be royally difficult to win in South Bend. And as already mentioned, that's why the Michigan game is so important. When you go to Notre Dame, and we've all been there, it is such a different atmosphere from the time you step on campus. Forget about the stadium. There's so many iconic things, seeing the Golden Dome, all of it can really be a distraction. Now you can say, well, the players aren't going to see the Golden Dome if they don't come there, but before the game, but they'll see the fans. It's just an incredibly great experience. It made much greater if you can get a win there, which is, you're going to feel pretty good if you do.
And I've seen quite a number there, fortunately, because Pete Carroll ran off quite a number. But yeah, look, you're probably right that it's helpful to go beforehand. But the thing is, the stadium itself, it's not overly large. It's fine. It's probably 80,000 seats, which is probably average for the Big Ten. There's nothing special about the stadium. There is something special about game day when it's USC Notre Dame, and we'll see. You have to make good decisions, and you have to protect the ball, and you have to deal with the fact that the referees are going to hose you 3 times. They just are. They just are.
Chris, I slightly disagree with you with their stadium. The proximity of the fans to the sidelines, you're right on top of the action. So as far as there's 80,000, absolutely. It's loud. It's electric. It's intense, especially if you have, 2 ranked teams going against each other. Hopefully that'll be the situation this year. And as we've been talking about, if this is the last game for the foreseeable future, everybody's going to say, I was there. Just like the 2005 Bush Push game. There's going to be 350,000 people in that stadium for this game.
No, actually, I don't think we do disagree, Mark. I'm with you. On game day, it's going to be an intense atmosphere. The day before, if you just look at the stadium empty, I don't think it matters much. But look, it's a huge game. It may be the last. I hope not, but it may be the last time this game is played for a while. If you're a USC fan and you haven't been to South Bend for USC Notre Dame game, do it this year. Even if you thought you were going to go to some other games instead, just go to that game because it is special and it may be going away. And I think that's going to make it even a little bit more intense than usual. And it's always intense.
And with the bye after that, you could just walk from there to Lincoln and be there 2 weeks later for the Nebraska game. It's perfect.
That sounds like a great idea.
I gotta say, this is like one of the stranger sort of quirks in a schedule that I can remember for USC in a while, where you go bye, game, bye, like two pretty quick buys back to back to where it sets up. I mean, this part of the schedule at Illinois, bye, home to Michigan, at Notre Dame, bye, at Nebraska. It's huge. The range of emotions that you could go through as a team and the need to kind of focus and day to day and game to game in that. I mean, when you go through and you sort of say, okay, if they win this, how's it feel? If they lose this, how's it feel? Like it's pretty wild to get those 4 games in a 6-week span where you're dealing with 2 buys and on the road and at home and how all that works. It's a wild stretch of schedule for USC right here, right in the middle of it.
I think that's actually a positive. It keeps the team focused. There's no room for any letdown. It's like, oh, you know what? We're playing Northwest.
You don't want Furman? You don't want Furman in the middle of that stretch?
Like I said, I kind
of do.
I think it's more positive. You're trying to keep your team focused. And, we always talk about, not us, but coaches will always say each game is, the same. You don't try and put one above the other. We know that's coach speak, but this is probably a great way for this team to say, hey, we come through that stretch doing what USC is capable of doing, then we can reach our goals. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where USC finished the season against, what was it, Notre Dame and UCLA and Oregon. They ended up, it was a 13-9 season, 2006. They had 4 really tough games at the end of the season, back to back to back to back, and everyone thought the UCLA game was going to be the easiest of the bunch. Turns out that's what kept USC out of another national championship opportunity.
Yeah. Well, look, it's college football, which means that most teams are going to lose a game they shouldn't lose. Most teams, even good ones, right? Ohio State lost 2 games last year they shouldn't have lost. They had the best roster in college football. They limped into the playoff with 2 losses. So we'll see. I mean, if USC gets through that murderer's row 3-1, then they're set up for a fantastic season. If they get through.
Like Nebraska was a great team last year. They're still in a rebuild mode also. And I get it's in Link, but let's not pretend that USC's going to, top 10 team. They're not.
That's not the same.
But it's not home against Northwestern. Yeah. Right. It's like the next week it's home again. Like it's not Purdue slipped in there. Like it's another tough road atmosphere against a team that can play a little bit of football.
A team that's well coached, that has a quarterback in his second year, that in a sold out atmosphere. I'm with you, Mark. That's not like at Notre Dame or at Oregon this year, but that is absolutely a game that even a good football team could lose, which Ohio State almost lost that one too last year. So, yeah, that's a stretch. Okay, let's shift our focus just a little bit. There was some news this past week about the new clearinghouse. So the House settlement set up a clearinghouse where NIL deals would go to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse would make at least an initial determination whether it's a legitimate NIL deal or whether it's not. And that would have significant repercussions, because if it's not, the player has to walk away from that deal or they're going to find themselves ineligible. They could appeal to an arbitration if the clearinghouse rules against them. But I don't think anybody should expect that the arbitrator is going to be ruling against the clearinghouse very often. So what's interesting is that the news is that the collective deals are getting killed before the clearinghouse. We don't have it. We don't have the firsthand information, right? We don't see the deals that are being tossed aside. But the rumor is that the clearinghouse is absolutely clobbering deals between athletes and collectives, and is being very kind to deals between athletes and legitimate companies, which shouldn't be a huge surprise, right? Because that's the whole point of the clearinghouse, is to end pay for play and limit these things to legitimate NIL. So, guys, here's the question. If this is true, what does that mean for USC, which appears to be spending a whole lot of money right now, more than the $20.5 million allocated from revenue sharing? And so what does it mean to USC? What does it mean for these other programs like Ohio State and Oregon and others who absolutely were spending more than $20 million last year on their roster? What's coming down the pike? Chaos? Mutinies from players who aren't getting paid what they want? Courts jumping in to tell the NCAA to go to hell? What's coming down the pike?
Isn't that what's already? Isn't that it? Hasn't that already been happening? All of those things? Like, yeah, it's more of the same. We're gonna get to a point where you have like more Saturday morning rulings dictating whether guys can play that day or not. I mean, it sounds crazy, and maybe it doesn't happen, but it could. I mean, that seems feasible for this season.
How do you declare a player ineligible when they're allowed to make money? And we're now talking about how much they are making. I mean, I don't know how you cross that bridge.
I mean, I think look, the determination itself is easy enough. I think the way the clearinghouse is looking at it is this an endorsement deal that seems to be within the realm of reason with a company that has actual goods and products and needs to advertise? Or is it simply Uncle Phil funneling some of his billions into an account so you can give to players who one day a year have to show up and sign 6 autographs, right? I mean, I don't think it's that hard to do the determination. The question is, and courts do this sort of determination all the time, whether something, what the market value of a person or a thing is. I think the difficult thing, though, is you have a bunch of programs that have made a lot of big promises to players. We don't know exactly what those promises are. We don't see them. So I don't know how much USC is paying Jakeem Stewart. I don't know how much they're paying Mark Bowman. I don't know how much they're paying Luke Wafel. What I do suspect is that some of what those guys are getting is collective money and not just money from Sony to to advertise their goods. I don't know what comes of that or what the players have been told. Nobody does. That's part of this whole crazy system. But it would not shock me if, I'm not speaking specifically about USC now, it wouldn't shock me if there are a lot of guys who thought they were going to be making $530,000 this year, 400,000 of which come from a collective, and that deal gets struck down, and they and their parents are enraged at the university. And what comes after that, I don't know.
Was it just the Texas Tech recruit where it was something about the lawyer came out really strong and said, "Oh, this is a $5.1 million deal," and then there was like a quick, no, it's actually 700,000 a year or whatever with the chance to make up to here. So I think there is a ton of language in all of these where it's if this, then this, if this, then this, if this happens, then you could make this much. And so it would not surprise me if there's a lot of that language in here and a lot of people without sort of the expertise in there saying, no, here's the biggest number in that contract. This is what we're getting.
Yeah, and on top, go ahead, Greg.
I think one of the things that I'm looking at is how that affects recruiting. How many players decided they would go to school A based on what they were going to get from that school? And perhaps it turns out that they're not going to get that much because of these rules or whatever, and it might really affect recruiting. Now, I will say this, and I'm hoping I'm right on this. SC went through some real hell with the NCAA. We know that. And this is a whole new deal. It's still evolving, the NIL and stuff. My thing is, I think SC is smart enough to figure it out because I feel that they have people in the right places now that will know how to deal with it appropriately and will avoid some of the pitfalls of like, collectives that are kind of like, what do you mean? That doesn't shake. But when you talk about, you have collectives with say, I'm just making this up, so don't take it. If you had collectives with say Sony Pictures or Universal Studios or people of that nature, SC is going to know how to deal with it. They're not going to want to. There's no way is this school going to want to be embarrassed again with something that is fairly obvious to everyone that was not a good idea. But I want to know how many players are not just SC but everywhere else may be changing. Remember, none of the guys from this class as number one have signed anything. So, we'll see how many players can maintain. I still want to go to wherever they want to go to based on a change of how much money they might get. It'll be very interesting because SC is going to have to do a real good job of explaining that here's how we're going to do it. And hopefully the players will agree with it.
If USC has managed to put together this recruiting class relying on Sony and American Airlines rather than House of Victory, I'll be stunned. And so what happens if, and it's not just USC, look, it's Oregon and Ohio State and Texas and everybody else who's put together a big time roster, they're doing it with collective money. That's how they've done it. That's what made the change. I'm convinced that's what made the change with USC this year. Not only better coaching staff, not only better administration, but also the fact that USC's collective started writing bigger checks. What happens to all these programs if the clearinghouse starts saying, Nope. That Ohio State collective deal's no good. Nope. That Oregon collective deal's no good. You're gonna have chaos, and you're gonna have a lot of angry players, and the schools may very well say, look, we told you we didn't know what was going to happen, but I don't think that's going to be an answer that some of these players and parents will accept, especially the ones that already bought Mom an Escalade a month ago. So I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably likely that the courts strike this down. Okay, but I think the NCAA has a chance to win this time, whereas previously there was no chance. Whatever they throw out there, the courts were just going to throw it on the barbecue, and that would be the end. But if this doesn't get struck down soon, we're going to see what happens. And I think you're going to have a lot of players who are looking around saying, "Where's my money?" And if they're doing that, they're going to be very unhappy. And how does that affect? How does that affect their willingness to practice hard and play hard? How does it affect their willingness to sit on the bench behind a guy who is a year older, and they're not getting any playing time, and they can't reach their incentives under the revenue share? I don't know. I have a feeling that we thought it was chaotic before. I have a feeling that chaos is only starting.
I mean, if you truly just go with the rev share money, right? 20.5, whatever that is, for your entire athletic department. And so if you're a football team, so you're going to give, I mean, 18, right? A huge majority to football. 18 million gets you 8 wins if you're really, I mean, I know it's not exact, right? Just like the 5-star, 3-star, whatever. But you are not competitive if the other teams can go to 30, 35, 40. You're not competitive with those teams. And a lot of those programs are at that number. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, if it truly goes that way, you're gonna have to tell every single kid on your team, hey, we need you to take 25% of what we promised you to get down to that number.
This is what it's going to come down to. Everything that ends up in court. 3 words: fair market value. That's what this whole thing is predicated on. USC had
and let's be honest, when it comes to fair market value, if you're a really good high school football player, you know what your real fair market value is with advertisers, like real companies, real commercials. It's zero. It's zero. The high school players, United Airlines isn't hiring a kid because he's a good guard at some school in Texas. So you're not, I mean, there are unusual Caleb Williams or the Reggie Bushes or Tim Tebow's or Cooper Flagg, right? There are players out there who have legitimate market value for endorsements, and it's a significant number. On almost every roster in college football, the number of players like that is 0 or 1. That's the reality. And so if we're talking about who has market value to justify what they're making, the answer is almost none of these kids. Almost none of them. That's why you have collectives. Here's the other thing. Let's assume that the courts uphold this for a second, and let's talk about what that means. Because if you're a program like USC, while you opted into this thing and you're talking about how this is good, we have rules, I think if you're USC, you don't really want this. Because look at it this way. Now that at some point, like a year ago, USC woke up and looked around and said, wait a minute, we have a lot of rich alumni, don't we? Maybe we can actually use a lot of money and buy a roster. And they started doing what Ohio State and Oregon were already doing, what Texas was already doing. Let's say you're capped at $20 million. And let's say you're a school like USC who expects to recruit 15 blue chips a year. I don't know how the money goes around, especially because there are going to be programs like, let's say Maryland, right? Maryland's not going to get 15 blue chips a year, and they know that, but they can absolutely pony up for one, right? They can. And you're not going to be able to meet that price. If you're going to have 10 of these guys or 15 of these guys, you cannot meet the price of the programs that know they're not going to do that, but they're going to pay 1 or 2 guys, and they're going to try to scout better than everybody else and develop better than everybody else. I think what this means is the days of the days of Georgia and Alabama, USC under Pete Carroll, Ohio State currently or under Urban Meyer, the days of those programs being absolutely loaded top to bottom with blue chips, those days are over. If you look at Major League Baseball, why would the Dodgers and the Yankees ever want a salary cap? Why would they ever want a salary cap? The Dodgers can just sign every all-star they want. It's the A's that want a salary cap. And USC is in the position of being a Dodgers or a Yankees right now in recruiting. And the A's of college football don't want USC to have that advantage. And I guarantee USC is going to lose out on some really good players because of the salary cap, a lot of them. And just about every major program will. And it will be more like the NFL, where you have significant parity in a way you've never had before. I think that's what's coming if the courts uphold these rules.
So you're not giving, allegedly, Jakeem Stewart $2 million a year because he was good in high school. You're paying him that amount because he's got a nickname named Thanos, and Marvel just happens to be down the street from USC. So that's where I come back to fair market value, location. USC can justify a lot of their NIL deals because of the businesses that are around that are in Southern California. You talk about the Polynesian players that USC has. If I'm Hawaiian Ono, that restaurant chain, I'm getting every single one of them hawking my food. USC can literally validate every deal they want to do.
I bet they won't. I'll bet. I haven't seen the deals, but I bet they won't, because those kids don't.
Throwing it out there.
Jakeem Stewart is making more money than he would make if he was simply getting paid by legitimate companies on legitimate endorsement deals. Of course he is. Of course he is. What happens with that, I don't know. My guess is that there are going to be some players that challenge this, and it wouldn't surprise me if somebody finds some federal district judges that want to put an injunction on these rules between now and September. We'll see, but that would not surprise me in the slightest. And so I think it's just more chaos. Chaos is awful, I suppose, unless it's chaos, but you're one of the guys holding a really big money bag, then the chaos is good for you. So I'm actually in favor of chaos right now.
Are you planning on changing the type of law you practice, Chris? Are you going to become the next Darren Heitner type of? Are these the new names everyone's going to learn? Who's the attorney representing so and so?
What you will find is, if there's money to be made in this, then lots of really good lawyers will jump into it. And just because you're the first guy who's jumped into it doesn't mean that it's going to last for you. So we'll see what happens. I know we have some guys that got there early, but if there's enough money, the big players will jump in. And am I willing to sue the NCAA? I am. Call me if you're interested. Okay, guys, let's do this. The Big Ten preseason poll just came out, and USC was right there in the middle of the pack. Let's start with big picture thoughts. Greg Katz, did you see this Big Ten preseason poll? What'd you think?
I was interested on how many of the schools that is on SC schedule where they were placed. And when you take a look at it, USC is going to face the Big Ten number 3, Oregon, number 4, Illinois, number 5, Michigan. So that they're going to have a numerous amount of times to show what they can do. Even Nebraska is ranked again ahead of USC. Iowa's ranked ahead of USC. I know it means nothing in terms of, the bottom line, a game has to still be played. But you can see the challenges there. There's no Penn State. There's no Ohio State. But after that, SC gets the number 3, 4, and 5. Now, what I didn't like about the media poll is that it wasn't really a comprehensive poll. It was a select group of media people that they picked. I was looking to see personally what friends I might know that were on this media poll. I didn't see at this point in time who they listed as voters in this, but I have to think that the Big Ten or Cleveland.com, whatever they're calling themselves, to deal with it, went to people that had some knowledge of coast to coast At least they should. But I was pleased with it. I'm not unhappy. I am disappointed, but I understand why SC is number 9. But I also understand that if SC can beat Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, and Oregon, that poll is going to look awfully silly at the end of the season, which is a possibility until the games get played. It's just an opinion. And SC at the middle of the pack. I mean, let's face it. SC is such a huge name historically in college football. For a long time, they were getting the benefit of the doubt. And now they've kind of gotten people that maybe gave them the benefit of the doubt that don't want to do that again because they've played to not too good the last 2 years. So number 9, okay, middle of the pack, no problem with me. You're not going to justify it on arguments. They're fun, but it's still about what you do on the field.
Yeah. Mark, USC is sort of in a grouping there in the middle with the Iowas and Nebraskas and Washington and some of these other programs where you look at it and you could make an argument why a team from that group will make a jump this year. But you can also look at that and say, the media guys have reason to be skeptical of all those programs. Isn't that a fair place for USC to be right now? Sort of in a pack of teams that might be good, but you just can't trust them yet?
Sure, if you want to just, base it off of that statement alone, are they the 9th best? I mean, they literally said USC is just average. They are middle of the road, period. Number 9 out of 18. Are they worse than those teams? I'm fine with teams 1 through 4. I can deal with the way that was positioned. But Michigan at 5, again, what is this being based on? Someone even gave them a first place vote. You're starting a new quarterback. You're replacing so much talent. It's just what went into the vote. I was kind of curious, Eric, if you were one of the people who voted on this, who from the West Coast was the representative? Because there's supposed to be, what, two beat writers? I mean, I was trying to read into this, but you really don't know who participated. From what I think, it just looks like a bunch of Midwestern guys protecting their Big Ten programs compared to, I don't think a lot of research went into this vote. Let me just leave it there.
Michigan at number 1 is silly. Whoever voted that way is silly. And that doesn't mean Michigan can't be a really good team this year. I mean, conceivably they could win the conference, but based on the problems they have, the holes they need to patch up, that's a silly vote. The top 3, it seems to me. I mean, Eric, we can't really argue the top 3, can we? I mean, you've got Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State and Oregon have some question marks. Penn State may have a question mark at head coach, although he's not a bad coach, but you wonder whether he'll win the big games. But I think all 3 of those teams are going to be good, right? They're so talented, they're going to be good. After that, I don't know what you have in this conference. What do you think?
I think what you said, makes a lot of sense. Like you look at the points and how it went out. USC is at 9 is as close to Michigan at 5 as they are to Minnesota at 11. So like that group 6, 7, 8, 9, that's the same team. So like if you were 7 in a bunch of polls, so the team was 5 in a bunch of polls, and then you 5 were, how that works out. To me, that those teams are grouped so closely that same thing. I'd be 18. I'd be 18 going to the preseason, and I looked at it from if I cover Michigan, if I cover Rutgers, if I cover Purdue, USC lost to any team that showed up when USC was on the road last year. If you showed up at home, you beat USC. I mean, UCLA, that's playing in the Rose Bowl is always going to be different. That's not on the road. That doesn't count. So you look at it and you go, okay, they got to go to Purdue. I'll give them a win there. But at Illinois, loss. At Nebraska, loss. At Oregon, loss. Right? And then they lost to any team that could show up and play ball control and take advantage of quarterback mistakes. That's Michigan. That's Iowa. So if I don't know every single thing that went on this offseason, and I don't know about the defensive build and all that kind of stuff, I go 4-5. 4-5 in conference. That's not that much of a stretch to get to 9, 9-10. Sure. That makes sense to me. And I think as a US, like USC's still got to figure out, can your offensive line play with these defensive lines? Can your quarterback not throw absolutely crippling interceptions in the second half of games? We think so. We think so. Some other guy may think not. And that's where you end up with this poll.
Yeah, I think the Big Ten media is underestimating USC, and I think that may be part because I'm a homer, but also because I look at what USC is building defensively and I believe in it. But I can understand if you're not going to believe in Jade Mayava, and based on all these articles about the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten, people don't. If you don't believe in Mayava and you don't believe in USC's offensive line, I can understand why USC would be in that spot. I'll say this: some of these teams, Illinois is not as good as people think. That's my position. I don't think they were very good last year. They won a lot of very close games and put up very average numbers. They just weren't that great, but they won close games, whereas USC and Nebraska lost them. But those teams weren't that far apart. But if you look at Illinois' schedule, it's a joke of a schedule, right? There's no Ohio State, there's no Penn State, there's no Michigan. They do have Ohio State. They get them at home. I mean, yeah, Illinois is going to win 9 games because they play 8 nobodies. But I don't know that they're as good as people think they are. But if you're basing this on what you think the likely end result is going to be the conference standings, then I guess you have to have Illinois up there as high as they are. And it makes sense to put USC where they are because USC's schedule is more difficult. But I think this USC team's going to surprise some people. But I thought that last year after the LSU game too.
This poll, looking back at 2024, they had Ohio State won huge. 21, they had 27 voters, 21 of them. Ohio State won. They win the national championship. They had Oregon 2. Oregon wins the conference. They had Penn State 3. Penn State played in the conference championship game. So top 3 there. USC was 6 last year, and I think it's one of those things where, again, USC consistently has underperformed when they've been ranked high over the last, I don't know, decade, 2 decades. So again, go win games. Your schedule's set up. Your schedule's set up where you can make a point. You can make a point this year.
Yeah, win that Illinois game, win that Michigan game, and you're in a good spot. Lose those two when you're looking at another 7-5 season. That's where we are. So we'll see. Guys, before we shut it down this week, we've been putting up on the message boards, up on the website, WeAreSC, one player a day or close to that of our 30 most important players. And everybody interprets that a little bit differently. We have some guys who are really good who aren't as high on the list and everybody freaks out, but that's because they have 3 or 4 other guys in their position group that can play. Let's not go through every single one of them. Let's just pick out a couple that have come up in the last week and talk about those guys and why they're where they are. And Eric, since you're in charge of this whole thing, maybe you can start because you'll remember the names and I'll remember 1 or 2.
I think the 3-man run we've been on with the last 3. So starting 15, 14, 13, it's been all defensive line. And we've had a couple of these where we had 3 corners in a row. Now defensive linemen. Wait to see the offensive line run coming up here in a little bit. But Devin Tompkins, Anthony Lucas, Keyshawn Silver at 15, 14, 13. And again, I think part of that drags them down just a little bit on the list because, okay, if Devin Tompkins can't go, then you've got Jade Abasiri. If Anthony Lucas can't go, then you've got Cameron Fountain, Braylon Shelby. If Keyshawn Silver can't go, Jamal Jarrett. If Kobe Pepe is ready to keep going. So there's the depth behind that defensive line, I think. But boy, this is the first time in a while where you talk about that defense line. It's just name after name after name of guys that you really expect to have big years. really expect to have big years. I think it's one of those things where you can't talk about the defensive line enough, just the way it's set up. And then of course we'll get to a tipping point, right? You guys talk so much about the defensive line and they didn't get 12 sacks a game or whatever that is, but I just don't see any way that that defensive line doesn't go out and give you a chance in every game. Unless you are turning the ball over 5 times a game, that defensive line is going to give you a shot in every single game this year.
Yeah, let's talk about Keyshawn Silver just for a second. Greg Katz, Silver's probably a guy who's not going to have big numbers at the end of the year, right? Keyshawn Silver's not going to have 9 sacks. He's not going to. That's not what he's going to do. But how important is it for USC to have a guy like that? A very big, very experienced guy in the middle of that defensive line? Because it seems like it's been a little while since we had that. How important is it?
It's as important as it's as important as he wants to play. You know, I mean, I assume that Keyshawn Silver wants to go to the NFL. And I assume that he understands that SC's in enough games, in enough places where he's going to be checked out. So if he can take what he does and does what everyone expects him to do and maybe clog the inside, then, he's an important piece. But we've had players that have come here that were very highly touted that turned out to be very highly horrible. And I know there's a lot of positiveness on this defensive line depth and everything, and I'm all for that. And I'm excited to see how they'll play. Some of them are going to play better than we thought. Some of them are going to have their adjustment period, perhaps. But I think that Silver is one that if he plays to what they think he can play to, obviously if he does, they're going to be a much better team defensively up front, which will help the secondary.
If you can't control the A gaps, it's very difficult to play good defense, right? I mean, there are places you can be average at some spots defensively and maybe hide the guy, but if you can't control the A gaps, there's no answer for that.
Well, I'm sure that Notre Dame's going to find out whether they can control the A gap.
No, that's absolutely right. And where Notre Dame, one of the things that Notre Dame did well in recent years is control the A gaps. And all those years when USC was beating the snot out of Notre Dame, they couldn't. I mean, you have to control that spot. You have to. If you can't do that, you can't do anything right. If you get a push there, if that center is being pushed backwards half the time, that changes everything for all the other 10 guys on the defense. I mean, it's a huge deal. So whether Keyshawn Silver or Josh Jarrett or Kobe Pepe or the other guys can do that or not, we'll see. I suspect with the coaching we have and the bodies we have, they'll find somebody who can do it. But Keyshawn Silver belongs on the list as high as he is, because if he can get that done, it changes a lot of things for USC's defense. Mark, one of the guys that Eric mentioned is somebody that the USC coaching staff can't stop talking about, Devin Tompkins, who a few years ago was a basketball player project, weren't really sure what we had. And now when you listen to USC's coaches talk, they talk about this guy being an all Big Ten guy and a future NFL player. What do we make of this transformation, and do you believe it?
So he was the only defensive lineman USC brought in their 2022 class. He was it. He was the defensive line class. He's put in the time. He's developed. He's gotten bigger. He's learned how to play the position. And he's, last couple of years now, he's learning it from from Eric Henderson, who is a interior guy compared to Sean Nua, who is the edge guy. Here's what Devin Tompkins or Keyshawn Silver need to do. They don't need to put up big stat numbers. They need to turn into somebody who needs to be double teamed, because that's going to make the rest of that defensive line better. That's what USC's been missing on the interior. Somebody who can push the center, a yard or two back into the backfield, or somebody who commands more attention than one player. So can Keyshawn Silver be that guy? Can Devin Tompkins be that guy? The coaching staff is raving about Devin. His athleticism, everything he's turned out to be, everything you want your three technique guy to be. Is he that guy? And can he start to command double team type of attention? If one of those two players can do that on a consistent basis, that defensive line is going to create chaos. They're going to make mayhem. They're going to make the secondary that much better. And it's going to free up the linebacker back. So it starts in the middle. Anything you play defense, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, you want to be strong up the middle. Hopefully USC is strong up the middle right now on their defensive line.
Yeah, and I think Tompkins is a guy that they do expect some. I don't know that they expect him to get 7, 8, 9 sacks, but I think this is a guy that they do expect will be in the backfield making plays. Whereas Keyshawn Silver, I think, is a guy you expect to occupy two guys and push the offensive line back. But the coaches are excited. I'm excited to see what he can do. It would be nice for everybody if he had the year they think. Eric, the last guy you mentioned. Anthony Lucas. Last year going into the season, I think there were two defensive linemen that we were looking at. We're saying we need to have a big step up from Anthony Lucas. We need to have a big step up from Bear Alexander. And they lost both of them in the middle of the season, one to a whiny attitude, one to an injury. But that loss of Anthony Lucas last year was one of the more devastating losses. That and Eric Gentry. The loss of those two guys was just devastating to a defense that just didn't have the level of talent they needed. What do you expect from Anthony Lucas this year?
I think he's going to play well. He's another guy that he wasn't full go in the spring, still kind of coming back. But boy, the flashes he showed, the strength he played with, and sort of just the consistency that he played with, I think he's a guy that benefits from a better push inside and more consistency inside. I think that he led the team in quarterback hits last year, playing half a season. And I think if there's more push inside, he can do more on the outside. Because look, we love Gavin Meyer, right? Love Gavin Meyer. Loved how he played, everything he brought. He was not the athlete or just the presence inside that you think you're getting from these other transfer portal guys. Nate Clifton, same thing, right? Energy, effort, all that kind of stuff. They could get pushed around. They get pushed around inside, and every game it happened. It happened at like worst possible time, fourth quarter. There's a big run up the middle to help keep a game-winning drive going. So I think Lucas plays the way we saw him play and gets kind of more one-on-one looks and that sort of stuff. And I think his numbers look better this year because he benefits maybe as much as anybody from those guys on the inside.
I think Lucas may be the surest thing of all the defensive linemen. And that would have been crazy to think last year because we saw very little from him the prior year. He didn't look like he was ready to play at this level. But then you saw him in the LSU game where he was unbelievably physical and flat backing, pulling guards, and you think, whoa, this is a guy who's taken the next step and was playing better than anybody up front for USC before his injury. I think if I had to pick one guy, if you told me, pick one guy that you think will play at an exceptionally high level up front for USC, I think I'm taking Anthony Lucas. I feel very comfortable that if he stays healthy, he's going to be a problem. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of sacks, but he can get pressure on the quarterback. He was getting some pressure, although he wasn't getting a lot of sacks. He can set the edge. He's a guy that you're going to have to deal with in the running game. And I feel good about him, really good about him. I hope he stays healthy. And if so, I think he becomes the guy that everybody expected him to be when he was coming out of high school in Arizona some years ago.
Again, if he can be a guy who commands double team action, that's going to free up the guy on the other side of the line to get in there and sack the quarterback. You just need somebody to become an all-conference level player, and that's what USC's been lacking.
Yeah, you need somebody off the edge that can get to the quarterback. And is that going to be Anthony Lucas? Maybe. Is it going to be Cameron Fountain? Maybe. I think both of those guys are likely to play really well this year. They didn't have a lot off the edge last year, especially after Lucas got hurt. So really important piece. I think he's going to play well, and if he does, that will help a great deal.
But you saw, I
Okay.
mean, you saw what Michigan did last year, right? Like those edge guys were really good. They
Because
looked a lot better with those guys in the middle. I mean, when you need to put six guys to block two in the interior, those edge guys can do a whole lot more now.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. And I thought you were saying, look what Michigan did. I thought you meant when they just grabbed Anthony Lucas with two hands and turned him on the goal line.
Well, there's that too. And look, when we talk about Big Ten stuff, right? What Lincoln Riley learned, what he's not going to go out and say, yeah, we can throw anybody around that we want now. Like you grab whoever, whenever, and throw them to the ground, and it's fine. But that is a little bit of what you learned last year.
If you are not teaching your offensive linemen and your corners to use their hands aggressively, you are getting it wrong. Because in the Big Ten, you could get away with anything.
how many times did Michigan get called for holding in that game? Give me a guess.
I think it was 0, wasn't it?
You're right.
And if you watch the and this is not whining. Michigan understood what's going to get called in their conference, and they played the way you can play. But it was wild watching it from a Pac-12 perspective, where people were throwing flags every play, even if there wasn't anything to throw a flag about. And then you watch these offensive linemen with hands outside, fistful of jersey, turning people. It's like, you can do that now? Because I didn't think you're supposed to. So yeah, USC's offensive line needs to get in on the act, is what they need to do. All right, fellas, anything that we should talk about before we sign off?
No, that's it. Media day, and then we're
we-
knocking on the door of USC's in-house media day, and then fall camp getting started right around the corner here.
We're still waiting for that official start date, though, right? We haven't gotten that email yet.
The night.
Still waiting.
Less than a week to go.
Sometime next week, though. Yes.
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 Yeah. All right. Well, it's close. It's almost my favorite time of the year, which can very quickly turn into my least favorite time of the year, depending on what happens in some of these early games. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week. Until then, fight on.